It's the greatest podcast in the history of the world.
It goes high up and under the full foot. Becky's taken a ripper!
He has a bounce, he crosses 50, he pins the ears back, and he drills the goal!
All the latest news and views from around the VAFA.
Here's the big man!
The big guy.
He's done it again! This bloke extracts some of the finest!
All thanks to Mequicare, proud partner of the VAFA.
Makes a name for himself with these long bombs from outside the arc. It's a long bomb from outside the arc.
This is for the love of the game.
You can tweet that and hashtag it bloody good.
Hello everyone and welcome to For the Love of the Game, the official podcast of the Ammos. We're here all thanks to Mequicare. We've had a late withdrawal on the podcast today, so I welcome you in, Paddy Grindlay. Hello to you.
Hello, Joey. Good to see you again.
No Jason Bennett today. No. I thought, geez, he'd be keen as because St Bernard's got smacked by Old Brighton. He'd want to be definitely on this week's edition.
He'd want to be sick, is all I'll tell you. He'd want to be really, really unwell. But no, Jase feeling a bit under the weather. He's still able to put together his fantastic round report, which you can read on vafa.com.au. So I encourage you to go look at that one. But our man's voice is not doing too well at this point in the week. So a big cheerio to Jase. Hope you're on the mend.
Okay, and it's up to us now to go through the weekend's results and look ahead to round 4 after a big Anzac weekend. And it kicked off, Paddy, on Friday afternoon, Anzac Day, with probably the biggest shock of the season so far after the 15 games that we've played. Collegians, who Josh Herriot told me on Saturday were a shoo-in to beat Old Scotch, they beat the Cardinals, the reigning premiers, by a handful of points. Quickly, give us your summation on that game before we welcome in our very special guest.
Yeah, hot start for Collegians. 5-1 in the first term, holding a 16-point lead at the main break and then going on their merry way in the second half. And a 13-11-89 to 7-9-51 defeat of the reigning premiers after a slow start for the Lions in 2025. Alex LUKIC, the star, 5 goals that afternoon, and he joins us right now on For the Love of the Game. Hello to you, Alex.
Hello, guys. Thanks for having me.
Take us through that game of footy, mate. You were superb. Your team was superb. What's turned around since the Easter break?
I think, obviously going 0-2 to start the season like we did last year is not what we had in mind. But I know, we through the meetings through the week, Geordie just reiterated that we were trending in the right direction, and we just had to put the pressure on for Scotch. I guess we did that for 4 quarters on the weekend and got the result we were looking for.
Take us through how you looked into their game style. We feel that most teams look at the premiers of the previous season and think about things they can learn off them and also how to beat them. How did you go about trying to beat them?
Yeah, obviously Scotch are the benchmark for the league. Obviously they won the premiership last year, but obviously they like using the ball, real kick mark game and switching it. So for us it was really important just with our forward line, just really getting high, putting pressure on their halfbacks just so they couldn't chip it through the middle of the ground and then get it nice and easy into their forward. So I think we set the tone with that pretty early in the game, and it was just a good all-round performance from the team.
Alex, as I look at the team that ran out on the weekend, there are a handful of names that most people will recognise as they were part of the premiership side a couple of years ago, but there are a handful of names that some maybe aren't familiar with. Can you just talk us through the change that Collegians has gone through since the flag a couple of years ago?
Yeah, so obviously we've got a lot of younger boys in the team, and still a few experienced boys, but we've had a few great recruits this season, and obviously Big Jonty played his first game on the weekend and was unreal for us. But we've had Cooper Brennan come in, he's been unreal, and blokes like Max Stobie has just really brought a different dynamic to the team and just really given us a little boost that I guess we needed on the weekend, and hopefully we can carry throughout the rest of the year.
Now, what about for yourself? 5 goals is a handy outing on an Anzac Day game. Was there any extra incentive given the fact that you did once represent Old Scotch?
Yeah, I guess it's always fun playing against a team you used to play for. Obviously, having a few mates and familiar faces on the other side, it's always a little bit more fun. But I guess it just kind of brings out a little bit of that competitive edge when you've got some mates on the other team, and I guess it's always fun, but it's always nice when you can come away with the chockies.
Any of them give you any verbals while you were lining up for goal, Alex?
Oh, nah, you just hear a little bit of chatter, but I'm pretty good at blocking it out. So just go through my routine, and hopefully they go through the big sticks.
Alex, you mentioned Jonty McGuinness a little while ago, the young ruck playing in his debut game. I've had about 16 different people mention that this is a young man that I've got to keep my eye on across the start of this season. Tell us a little bit about Jonty.
Yeah, Jonty's he's a great character. He came down to the club earlier this year. He was a bit unlucky. He hurt himself during pre-season, so had a bit of an interrupted run into round one. So was pretty unlucky to miss round one. But yeah, his attitude's been great. He's just a great guy on and off the field, and yeah, for him to play as well as he did on the weekend, yeah, I know I'm stoked for him, and the rest of the boys are as well.
A couple of individual ones that I'm pretty keen to get your take on, Alex. The return of Matt Warren. I know he had the season-ending injury early last year, but to be able to have someone with such a sure head back in your back six must be helping the defence.
Yeah, Big Waz is a big rock for us down there. He's just his leadership, and you just know what you're going to get from him as well. He's able to lock down every key forward in the competition and do it at such a high level that it just gives the rest of the team confidence that what he's doing down there is helping the rest of the boys out. Now,
Alex, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Paddy, you've come to learn that I've got a healthy rivalry with the number 4 in your team, the big Barry Mayhood. Kicked a nice goal on the weekend from what they reckon is 55 metres. I've asked VAFA HQ to go out there with a tape measure because I'm not sure it was 55, but he's going well, the Bear in the centre square.
Yeah, Big Bear, he's going well. He's got himself nice and fit. He's obviously dominating. He's gone a bit more forward lately, which has been nice. Me and him down there, but I was on the bench at the time when he kicked it, so I can't give you an exact measurement there. But it was a big roost. It was a big roost, and it went over the fence. So I'm pretty sure it's close to that 55 metres there.
Okay, must have been a strong breeze going the way of the Bear in the centre square. I'm going to beat him in the ruck one day, Paddy.
One day. I wonder if the Bear asked Armand Dillon specifically to put that on the VAFA socials or not. We'll have to.
Oh, he's pretty modest, the Bear. But someone at Collegians, I'm thinking the smiling assassin Rocket Nankara would have demanded it. He's pretty modest, the Bear, Paddy. Now, it's always great to get a win. It's fantastic against Old Scotch. How do you string a second one in a row together? Because you're coming up against the mighty Snow Dogs. My man Josh Herriot, of course, from Collegians, comes up against myself this weekend. Neither of us actually play the game, Alex. We just watch you guys go to battle. But how do you knock off the Snow Dogs this week?
Yeah, they're a great side. We had 2 good games against them last year and played them in a pracky earlier this year. So it'll be a good game for us, really, to test where we are. Obviously, having such a good win on the weekend, it's mainly for us just to show that we can back it up and do it again and not make last week just a one-off performance and just build some momentum for the rest of the year.
And just before we let you go, Alex, it'd be remiss of us to not ask you about Geordie McKenzie in his second year in charge. He's one of the great men across the ammo. He's one of the most lovely blokes I've ever met. Mm-hmm. What's it like being coached by Geordie?
Yeah, Geordie's a great guy. Like you said, he's real positive. Obviously, we've got such a young group now coming through, so he's just been really good at gelling with the younger boys, giving them a confidence booster and really assuring that we're heading in the right direction. Obviously, it can get a bit tough at times when wins aren't on the board, but he's just doing a real good job of making sure we're focusing on what we need to and, yeah, just really working on the things that make us such a great side.
You can catch Collegians and St Bernard's as part of the Community TV doubleheader this Saturday from 11:35am. Resis into seniors, Joey. Looking forward to that one.
Josh Herriot will turn that game off inside the first quarter, I reckon, because his team will be that far back, Alex. I love you watching you play and the big Bear in the centre square and his man, Braden Fleming. But unfortunately, I can't tip Collegians against St Bernard's, unfortunately. But it's been great to have you on the podcast, Alex.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Great to spend some time with Alex LUKIC. Collegians get the job done in a surprise win, as we said, off the top against Old Scotch. Paddy, I want to go to the game you were covering on this Super Saturday. You were out at the Dairy Bell for De La Salle.
First trip there.
And St Kevin's. What was your take on the place?
It was interesting. We were right tucked in near the station wing side of the ground.
Yes.
Our man Brucey setting up the equipment for the first time. Had a mild panic attack in sorting it out. But it was actually quite lovely. I believe it's the Molan Cup that they play for De La and St Kevin's. So the rhythm of the day felt really lovely. It's been a bit of a tough year for D-Lark coming up. They've lost a couple. They were without Jake Williams and Christian Algieri, so the midfield was looking a little bit underdone. But I liked some of the guys they brought in. Nick Buffalo and Rob Amendola on the inside. Mm-hmm. They're going to be relying on them throughout the season. Of course, it was St Kevin's off the back of a massive second quarter that ran away with the win. I think the story for them is that their key forwards are now well in form. So Paddy Kerr had a bit of a slow start to the season. His first fortnight, he didn't quite look near it. We saw him at Scotch in round 1, Joey, and he was pushed nice and wide by Angus Hulse, who had the matchup, but he looked at his dominant best, kicked 6. Sam Critchley kicked 4.
Yes, I see they persisted with him up forward.
By the end of the game, he was marking everything. He even went for a specky and took it. Unfortunately, I don't think we quite got the camera angle which gave us the height. He didn't get that far off the ground, but he did get the lift
was
off
it
the back,
like a Corey Durden on Sunday for Carlton and
Didn't
Geelong?
quite get the Moorcroft call in, though, which I'm sure you enjoyed on the M's.
I did.
And the other one was Cal Jones up forward, who booted 3 from memory. So that's the key story for me for St Kevin's, is that they're tall guys who looked a little bit like they were working each other out and now in good nick. Little word on Tommy Ferguson.
Yes, please.
First game for him. He's a Richmond VFL listed player. He got a scholarship to go up to Bond Uni for the last couple of years. He's the former APS skipper of St Kevin's. Didn't know what number he was wearing before the game. He just rocks up, starts in the centre bounce, and off he goes and just dominated. So he was superb. D-Lar, I think the signs are certainly there from the younger players and some of their guys who played well at Premier B level last year. Tom Filipovic was one who really impressed me with his physicality for a smaller guy. But yeah, coming up a little bit outgunned. Some messaging from Nick Highland after the fact was pretty indicative. Noted they were outplayed by a very professional St Kevin's outfit, and lapses in intensity and concentration cost them in the second term.
So you've got to go back to round 14, 2023, where St Kevin's last kicked a score this big. That day was against the Caulfield Grammarians, who finished at the bottom of the table in 2023. They kicked 173 points that day. Prior to that, round 3, they beat the Old Melburnians by kicking 118. This has been something that I've talked about, obviously, in the preseason. I was hopeful of seeing in the opening game against Old Scotch. They've finally put a big score on the board. Now, just from the St Kevin's side of things, take out D-Lar Sal. The way they played on the weekend, can you see that being a sustainable brand, kicking a big enough score to finish top 2, top 4?
I think so. I think the answer for them is that they know they can do that now.
Yep.
So that's something they can put in their back pocket in round 3 rather than round 14, round 15, round 16. And they can experiment a little bit off the back of that. I think the thing, though, was when Paddy Kerr got going, he was given probably a lot of space and a lot of leading lanes. Mm-hmm. I don't think he'll be afforded that much space this weekend, especially at Brighton Beach Oval, which we'll get to in just a few minutes' time. Critchley, I think, is the story for them, because when they didn't have to feel like they had to go to Paddy Kerr, and Critchley could push up the ground, he could contest, he could bring the ball to ground, and we know that St Kevin's love to get those high half forwards and those creative half-backs around the contest and force the ball forward. So I think for the organisation of their 3 big guys up front, so Kerr, Critchley and Jones, it's a really key result for them, because now they know they can do it. I still think we'll see St Kevin's favour their defensive sort of dirge, if you will, game style, where they like to keep the ball in tight, play defensively and hold teams to low scores.
And Lukey Winter, I saw, had 14 clearances, 23 contested from his 28 disposals. He's an absolute lock for the Big V midfielder game.
He is. He's a monster. There are a couple of times where he won the ball in tight and just derobed himself of 3-4 opponents. He gives you a chance, Lukey Winter. He eyes you down and says, have a go if you think you're hard enough. And then he flings them off, and he's off and running in transition as well. There are a few moments, and our man Hugo Higginbotham made mention of this, where their ball movement looked a bit like a training drill. They were able to move the ball from inside to outside so efficiently. And when they did that, when they got the ball wide, it was pretty much a conveyor belt to full forward.
Let's head over to the Snake Pit, where I was on Saturday. Unfortunately, the game went the way of the Tunners. Now, these were the last 2 sides, incredibly, after the back of Old Scotch losing on Friday to be undefeated. So Old Brighton, I think, really made a big statement. And obviously I have a lot of fun with St Bernard's and my love for the football club, but they were outclassed from the first bounce of the game. Harry Hill set the tone, my favourite player, finished with 3 goals. Yep. At one point, he kicked his third in the third quarter, and I asked Tommy Clark, the president, can you find out from Harry if he's ever kicked 3 in a game? And the message came back, open quotation marks, I've kicked 3 before, close them. He didn't want to say anything else. I've just done it before. And I think he finished with something like 30-odd disposals next to his name. He was simply outstanding. And Granted, I haven't seen every Old Brighton game in the 7 or 8 years I've covered the Amos competition, but it would be up there as one of his better games in the last 2 to 3 years.
Before we get into it, some serious kudos to you for bringing St Bernard to the table when Jason Bennett isn't there to do it for us.
Yes.
Can I ask you about Ryan Agg? I watched the first quarter
The footy
of this
Rhino
game,
Agg.
and I saw the number 50, the big flying locks, taking big marks inside 50. I'd never seen him in my life before.
I had never seen him at all until he took that mark. I'm trying to work out who is this bloke in the number 50, and I'm still trying to work out who's the right comparison for people to think about and look at. And the best I can come up with at the moment aesthetically is Nat 5.
Right.
The footy Rhino Agg. So I was trying to work out Agg. It doesn't sound like a strong surname. So that's why I put the footy Rhino at the start. His first name is Ryan. He kicked a couple of goals. He was very confident for a young fella on debut to walk into the team that's currently sitting at the top of the ladder and perform the way he did. And he was pretty good on the lip too.
Oh, was he? That's important, I think, for the Tunners to find another tall forward because Joey Campielli's playing for Sandy. We may not see him really again this year, the way he's going in the twos. And then also you've got Will Lewis, who's playing for the for Footscray, rather, who is typically in key defence, true, but they do need to find another tall. Maybe they found one in the Rhino. We get to see him this weekend.
We certainly will. So apart from those two that we've already mentioned, I thought Tom Fisher had an outstanding game. He set the tone, winning so many clearances out of the middle of the ground. It was a great matchup between Felix Flockhart and Matt Soro. I'm giving the points to Felix on this occasion. Thought he was outstanding. It was my first look at the Matt Watson, Darren Kalako forward setup for St Bernard's, as well as Eden Sibold. I think Brighton set up so well behind the ball that it wasn't a really great four-quarters assessment of what I saw out of the Snow Dogs. And there's just one other that I do want to mention. You mentioned Joey Campielli. His brother Finn played his 100th game for the Tunners on the weekend. I've seen a lot of Finn play, and I thought he held his own really well.
Yeah, he's super. He's just sort of slotted in across halfback over the last couple of years. From what I watched in that first quarter, he looked so clean with the footy in hand, and they sort of searched for him once he'd got a few involvements going on. Just quickly, on that three-pronged forward line of Watson, Kalako and Sibbald, I reckon it might have worked better at Uni Oval where there was more space for them to operate. It just looked a little bit tight and clustered inside 50, so maybe that's something for Steve Alessio to put in his top pocket.
Well, speaking of the Uni Oval, I thought the system was broken on the weekend.
Yes.
Did the University Blues really just kick 3 goals?
I know.
And the University Blacks have beaten them?
I think wet conditions at the Melbourne Uni Oval, where you've got such width to deal with, makes for a low-scoring contest. We saw that a couple of times last year. I think there was a Black St Kevin's game, which didn't rise to great heights, but that was later in the year. But how about this from the Blacks? I'll tell you what, they were properly flat at the end of the St Bernard's game in round 2.
Understandably.
They gave themselves a massive show, would have felt confident about going and getting the win, but they were probably shown up by a much improved Snow Dog side. So to come out after the Easter weekend off, strengthen the jaw a little bit and go in hard against a pretty good Blues team from what we've seen in the opening rounds of the season. And to get the win and to hold the Blues to 3 goals, the likes of Grimley and Stewart.
Yeah, I know. What's going on there?
Effort. Yeah, so that's a bit of a warning sign for the Blues. And Matt Smith, I thought his comments to Jason Bennett on the article on vafa.com.au, which you can read in your own time, were very interesting. He was really disappointed because the Blacks just wanted it more. You hear that a lot in football. They just wanted it more, but it indicates that the coach probably feels that his boys left a fair bit on the park. So looking for the Blues to rebound this week.
This matchup between the two is always fascinating, and I love watching the power play between the two uni sides. However, I can't recall a game between the two of them being one that you go, gee, I cannot wait to watch that back. I reckon a couple of years ago, myself, Simon Petch and Josh Herriott covered the Anzac weekend between these two. It might have been the first time Blacks came back to William Buck Premier. And I reckon it was very similar, 5 goals to 3, a dour type affair, which for some reason seems to play right into the hands of the University Blacks when they've got a contest like this.
It is bizarre. I think Dale Bauer, he struck me as a defensive coach from the first time that I watched his boys play. So when they get the opportunity to, they're able to do that. And I think it's indicative that Angus Rana was their best player on the ground. So he's the ruck that's come back. They've had a few injuries in that position to start the season. And also Kane Loftus. I don't know if you've seen this
Haven't seen much of Kane.
But he is a smooth mover. He's one of those real big midfielders that's coming through that's also fast. So he can play through the corridor, likes to break tackles, backs himself in the contest. But then when he gets out in space, he's able to up and go. So he's a guy who I think I will certainly be keeping a close eye on it. Looking at the Premier Data stats, a low disposal game for both squads.
Would it maybe just stoppage after stoppage?
Quite contested, you'd think. You're looking at the tackling numbers and you're seeing, nines and sevens as far as the eye can see.
Without having delved too much into the vision of the game, I'm going to make an assumption that there was rain around Friday. There might have been a bit of rain around Parkville Saturday morning.
Yep.
We're talking about a ground where
Heavy
the
track,
broadcast wing is constantly covered in shade because of the magnificent grandstand and facilities that are at the Melbourne Uni Oval. It was played on that side of the ground. I dare say it would have been stoppage after stoppage, and the number one possession getter on the ground would have been the umpire.
You're not wrong. Marty Gleeson and Darcy Churgwin it was with 26 apiece. That's a quiet day for Marty, I think. With
Very
26.
quiet for Marty, but everyone's entitled to an off day, and I'm sure he'll bounce back this week. Now, last week on the podcast, I tipped Old Haileybury because I thought the aura was gone from the Old Zavarians after I thought the aura was back a week earlier. And I heard all about it on Saturday night because maybe this is their best win since the 2016 Grand Final. They were gone for all money from what I can understand and gather. Were they about 5 goals down at one point?
5 goals down. It was the back end of the second term and the early stages of the third, and they had to do it with one player down as well because Ben Bilston-McGillen came off with a lower leg injury. He was done for the day. The hyphen was gone. But then the report here coming from our man Brent Sternberg, who was calling the socks off it from the lush commentary box down there at Toorak Park. The Zavs midfield was enormous. So the likes of Stavrou, Sam Fisher, Dennis Simiopoulos, dragging them to victory in the second half. These are the players that you probably expect to put the Red and Black Mafia on their back and when needs require are able to just say, don't worry, boys.
Well, they're the experienced ones, aren't they? They're the ones that have led this club through the last couple of years, and it's not surprising at all to see those names as part of the best players from Dan Donati. Also not surprising that when Charlie McIsaac kicks multiple goals, the Old Zavarians win a game of footy. I love watching Charlie play whenever I get the chance to watch the Old Zavarians. I think he's pivotal to their forward makeup.
He's one of the great players to watch because when he runs out onto the ground, you don't particularly notice him as being remarkable physically.
Yep.
And then you see him jump at the footy and then you notice him being remarkable physically. He's one of those guys who just floats through the sky. He's about, I'd say, 6'4", 6'5", so he's not the tallest of all the key forwards in the competition. But when he takes to the skies, he's as tall as any of them and he's a beautiful mark of the footy.
Doesn't it sort of sum up to the way Old Haileybury unfortunately finished their 2023 campaign? They did so much right in the back half of that year just to fall short and then be relegated last year, and then to come back to not take on the Old Zavarians at Toorak Park to be almost at the finish line and then get pipped at the post. Daniel Ward did tell VAFA.com.au that he thought the Old Zavarians were cleaner with the ball use and their decision-making under pressure. So one silver lining is the Old Haileybury get that sting in the tail in round 3, and they can use this now as a beacon for them going forward into round 4 and beyond.
Yeah, early lessons as well, and the fact that they've been able to bank that win over Collegians, I think, in round 1 is instructive, kicking a massive score, falling short of Old Brighton, but it's a couple of really good tests for them.
Yep.
And early in the season, it's what we mentioned about St Kevin's a little bit earlier on. Once you get your system organised in round 3, round 4, it's a hell of a lot easier than having to find it in round 15. Word on Marcus Stavrou of the Zav. So his second half, 23 disposals, 14 contested possessions, 5 clearances, 2 inside 50, 75 ranking points. He was the 4th highest ranked player, I'm told, for the Old Zavarians, but our man Brent Sternberg tells me he was the difference at Toorak Park.
If we had VAFA coaches' votes like the AFL does and the VFL, I imagine he might have a perfect 10 from the weekend. I imagine someone like Harry Hill might have a perfect 10 from the weekend. Yep. Would you have a perfect 10 out of your game? Just thinking back on the spot here, of course.
I think we gave our Skins Player of the Day to Paddy Kerr, but I think we were thinking about Luke Winter potentially nicking it off him.
Okay, so you haven't got a cleared outstanding.
So no, I reckon he would have got the 8, the 7 or 8 or 9.
Okay, interesting. We spoke to Alex LUKIC a bit earlier on about the Collegian side of things. Just a word on Old Scotch before we take a break. 1 goal in the opening term, got jumped by the Lions, and no goals in the third quarter. A really good coaching masterclass from the Lions, and I reckon Mark Nutt will be fuming.
Steaming.
As an understatement. Fuming with the way they performed in a game that they build up every year, the Anzac game against Collegians.
I think they'd be flat as well because they've lost the last 2 of these games now, if memory serves me correctly. Last time out, it wasn't a great game of footy, albeit at the Harry Trott. It was a low-scoring contest that Collegians, I think, just choked them out a little bit. Like, they just controlled the ground. So I think if you're comparing the 2 seasons, Old Scotch, they mentioned that game a lot in the run home about how much they learnt from it. So it gives them a similar opportunity in 2025.
That is our William Buck Premier Men's Wrap. We'll take a quick break, and after this, the spotlight is on you. I cannot wait to ask you about what happened in Premier B on the weekend, because I reckon I got a tip right that probably threw a bit of chaos into our tips overall. Back shortly on For the Love of the Game.
Keep up to date with everything that's happening around the VAFA by subscribing to our socials. We're on Instagram, X, Facebook, LinkedIn and TikTok. Join in the fun with the best pics, videos, stories and reels from around the competition. Send us your best and we might share them around the league. VAFA Socials. Search VAFA and VAFA Women's on your favourite platforms.
Footy's at the heart of Victoria, but gambling harm is creeping onto our fields. That's where the Real Stakes steps in. Backed by the Victorian Amateur Football Association, the Real Stakes helps local clubs tackle the risk of online sports betting head on. Get the tools, spark the conversation, and protect what really matters, your mates. Visit realstakes.com.au to find out more. Now, Paddy, as you can hear in the background here, this is Conterzoglu and his choir of Williamstown CYMS people, because 11-9-75 defeated Fitzroy 7-13-55 on Anzac Day. You were at this game, were you
I was
not?
at this game. I was at Brunswick Street Oval. It was
Jesus.
awesome.
Did they get the pitchforks out when they saw the scores and saw you there?
Yeah, I was a little bit telly about how I'd be welcomed. No, it was great. I did see Con over the fence and had a quick chat to him before the game. Really, they do it so well at Brunswick Street Oval. We didn't see this contest last year, of course, the Anzac Day game between Willie and Fitzroy, because Fitzroy were in William Buck Premier, but they came back, had this wonderful ceremony pre-game. The bugle was played. Bumper crowd at Brunswick Street Oval. The only issue is that 5 minutes into the first quarter, it started tumbling down and it didn't stop for the rest of the afternoon. So everyone had to search for space to the very edges of the Kevin Murray stand. So we managed to get everyone up there.
Jeez, it was a cracking first quarter, though.
Really good first quarter. So everything started, I think, as Fitzroy probably would have wanted. The rain started to fall. Willie went in by nature a bit shorter because they'd lost their first and second choice ruckman. So they went in a little bit small. That probably worked for them.
Okay.
Bill Clayton for Fitzroy was superb around the ground, but Williamstown were able to retain a little bit more pace at ground level. I got to see Jordan Bussettle for the first time in the flesh at a VAFA game.
Named best on ground.
Best on ground. He's Essendon VFL committed this year after winning the last two Williamstown CYMS. Best and fairest. He was the difference in the last 10 minutes. This game was really close, right into the last 10 minutes until it took for the CYs to be able to scoot clear. It was Bussettle with a goal of his own, another goal assist, who really was the key distinction between the two squads. Conterzoglu was stoked post-game. He actually used Rory McIlroy as an example about trying to take
the Masters.
Yes. So Rory tried 13 times, or 11 times rather, to get through and win the Masters. Willie had set their sights on competing with the very best teams in Premier B footy. They had a shot against Old Trinity, didn't get it on the first occasion. It only took them to the second chance where they knocked off Fitzroy on their home deck. Jordan Bussettle was telling me he didn't think that this group had won at that ground. And it was certainly their first win against the Royce since 2018, Williamstown, so they are stoked.
Well, they would have played this game a couple of years ago. I remember Josh Herriott being out there for the broadcast of this on Anzac Day, and Fitzroy got the chocolates that day. Now, the Williamstown socials do a great job. And I woke up I woke up on Saturday morning to go for my Saturday morning run, and they had posted our tips from Friday night. Mine was on one side and yours was on the other, and I think there was a big X next to your name, and then under mine it said something about, are we finally friends? So I replied to the page and said, I thought we were always friends, and now they've come back with now even more so. So clearly they've been listening to the podcast. Clearly they've got you in the gun. I expect you tipping Williamstown at the end of this show today.
Oh, stick around for that one. Yeah, Conterzoglu's got me in the freezer and has for a couple of weeks since I stopped tipping him. It was great to catch up with both coaches actually after the game. Con understandably stoked with the victory. Travis Ronaldson is looking for his team to play 4 quarters of consistent football. They're a little bit short of where they want to be, but he can see that this group that has changed, it must be said, quite significantly since they were in William Buck Premier last year. He can see them starting to gel a little bit, but he would have probably liked a drier day. I reckon that would have played into their hands. But yes, looking forward to Con maybe returning my calls or texts sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Well, if you're listening, Con, my phone's always open and you can ring me any time.
I'm surprised you're not ringing him right now, to be frank with you.
I might get him up, but just stand by. Old Geelong have beaten Caulfield Grammarians by 25 points. Old Trinity accounted for the Hampton Rovers by 32. Old Carey beat the Old Camberwell boys by 24. And probably the game of the round on Saturday, Paddy, was Old Ivanhoe. 3-point winners over the Old Melburnians. That would have been a good conversation with the geese.
Probably the game of the round. Definitely the game of the round. It was a superb game of footy. So you've got to feel for the Old Melburnians. How's this for a stat? They've actually scored the most points out of any team in Premier B this year. They've won the most quarters out of any team in Premier B this year. They're 1-2, both their losses coming by under a kick.
What?
So Nathan Brown's team have been superb. They just haven't been able to stem the bleeding in a few key quarters. I wanted to raise this with you. So in round 1 against Old Carey, they had a second term where they lost it by 37 points. They kicked 2 goals to 8 of the Panthers and ended up losing by a kick. Last weekend against Old Ivanhoe in the second term, they kicked 3 goals. The Hoers kicked 7. That's a minus 26 quarter in that one, and that ended up being the difference between the two squads as cited by Nathan Brown. If you get the chance to, though, I would be watching the first quarter of this game on VAFA TV because some of the highlights in this first term, mostly from the OM's perspective, supreme. Ned Nichols, my goodness.
Yes.
He's a super talent when we see him in top flight footy. He's gone down to Premier B and he's just got that little bit better. He kicked 2 of the better goals you'll ever see from a running half forward. There was a big specky taken in the goal square by Ben Jackson late in the quarter. That's sure to end up on a highlight tape somewhere. And some of the transition footy from the Hoers who were fighting against the wind that was blowing towards the Glen Huntley Road end of Elstonwick Park are worth a watch as well. So 2 high-quality offences.
So I'm glad you mentioned the wind because you've just mentioned the 2 second quarters that the OMs have conceded to Carey and Old Ivanhoe on the weekend. Is it purely the wind? Is there something in Nathan Brown's armoury that he can do to try and stop momentum? We already know momentum is impossible to stop sometimes, but they've clearly got a trend at second quarters now.
They were able to do it in the fourth quarter, which is the interesting part. So they got beaten in the second term. They had to fight back against that. They did so. In the final term, so Old Ivanhoe go into the final term with the wind and with an 8-point lead, if memory serves me correctly. So they were feeling, and Jared Geeshan, considering the way they finished games of footy this year, he was feeling fairly confident. In the end, they were lucky to hold on. Old Melburnians were peppering the goals late in the quarter. They had 2 opportunities to hit the front in the last 5 minutes of the game, both shots going out of bounds on the full. So he probably feels like they've escaped with one. It's actually their first win, Old Ivanhoe, at Elstonwick Park since 2010. That's how long it's taken because, of course, the Melburnians used to play at Junction Oval. It's also their first 3-0 start since 2016 for the Hoers. But back to your original point, I think, again, as we mentioned in the Premier A discussion, it's about learning the key things that you need to improve on early. So for me, the Old Melburnians know they have the talent. They know they can score. They just need to be able to, I think, hold up a little bit better when they're not controlling the football because they've had these 2 massive second quarters that have cost them effectively games of football.
Yep. Can we just touch briefly on the Hampton Rovers because it's a tough season to start the year so far, still without a win. But as I bring up the scores, they trailed by 37 points at halftime, won the second half, and also dominated the third quarter, kicked 6 goals to Trinity's 2. Now, I know there was a big name playing for the Tees, and we'll get to that in a moment, but if you're Marty Pask and you're the Hampton Rovers, this is sort of the season where you've got to find stuff to cling on to, and maybe that second half is just something, the third quarter, obviously tangible evidence that when they get the game on their terms, they're more than competitive.
Yeah, Marty told me they had 14 players under 21 years of age on that day.
Well, that's very young.
And that is a significant young group. And it was a quintet of 19-year-olds, so Dan Hall, Will Crawford, Blake Jensen-Muir, Ben Sett and Zach Ziesling. They're a group to watch and they're coming through and really benefiting from the exposure at a pretty high level of football. Christian Carnival and Liam O'Driscoll are sort of king of the kids, if you will. They're leading them off nicely. Marty's really enjoying the year of coaching because he's actually finding that he's doing a lot of coaching and he's able to watch these kids improve basically week to week to week. You look at where the Rovers started the season and now they've really pushed the Tees. You spoke about the big name for Old Trinity.
Give it to us because people might not be aware of who we're speaking of.
Adam Tomlinson.
What's he doing here?
So the ex-Giant and ex-D, who is playing at North Melbourne VFL, they were on their second bye in the VFL, I believe, in a couple of weeks, and he was desperate for a game of footy, listed at Sorrento, but spoke to Donald McDonald, who he's got a relationship with. Donald's like, no worries, Adam, we'll get you down to play in the green and gold, and he had 34 touches, 12 marks, 7 rebound 50s, a game-high 174 Premier Data ranking points. And I think Donald was rather thankful to have him on because as you mentioned a little bit earlier on, that third quarter, they were a little bit toey, the Tees, about how things may have ended up. So to have his class was pretty crucial. On another day, maybe without Adam Tomlinson, the Rovers could have made a late charge, but he's such a classy footballer.
He certainly is. There's a return bout, of course, later on in the year. So if Adam's in that team, well, good luck, Hampton. If he's not, there might be a chance. Before we do take a break, I look over at Old Geelong and the Caulfield Grammarians. I saw a cracking goal, by the way. It's gone up on VAFA.com.
Mickey Nichols.
Super. Extraordinary effort, it must be said. Caulfield led by 2 points at half-time before the Ogs stormed home.
Yeah, 6-4-40 in the third term to 1-2-8. 2-point halftime deficit into a 5-goal three-quarter time lead. Again, this is the story of round 3. It's these big third quarters, these big second quarters that have led to teams winning the game of footy. That goal from Mickey Nichols right on the three-quarter time siren as well. Connor Dixon best on ground with 6 goals. It's Nick Dixon who's really happy with his pressure and his tackling. He's always had the offensive ability, but he's actually led them with defensive effort in the front half. Mark Nat's sacrificial acts, as he's educated you on before, Joey Pignataro, as we called it for SEN. The Ogs, it was that third quarter they used the width of Como Park, and this is the key thing. It's such a massive ground. You've got to know how to use the ground there. It's what the Ogs have focused on. They pride themselves on the ability to use the whole ground. They did so in the third quarter and got things on their terms.
Let's head over to Premier C, Paddy. Now, Jack BEHNK is going to join us very, very shortly. He had an absolute day out for St Bede's, who beat Glen Ira by 85 points. He kicked a bag of 12, if you don't mind. I think he took a couple of hangs. He had a day out, and we're going to talk to him about that in a moment. Parkdale Vultures walloped Beaumaris by 63 points. Pegs overcame Mazenod by 18 points in a close and low-scoring affair. Parkside accounted for Marshland only by 10 points, and the Jackers keep on keeping on. I'm getting really annoyed with my colleague, Lockie Buzzard, constantly telling me that we're young, we got injuries, we got no grounds to play on.
Top of the table, Lockie.
Maybe we'll get a game this week at home, maybe we won't. It's all a bit up in the air. They keep smacking sides.
I know. They've got a percentage of 239 and he wants to complain about ground availability.
They've had 35 scoring shots. The only problem with the team is they can't kick straight. 16-19 on the weekend. They've kept Paran to 4 goals. 3 of those goals came in the last quarter where they took the gas off. Remember they did the same to St Bede's a couple of weeks ago? I think Lockie is becoming a fraud and he actually can coach. He just refuses to accept that. But that is a terrific result, given the key injuries that they do have. The fact that you're right, they've started this season in the best possible fashion. And if what Lockie does say is they are young, if there is some serious injuries that they can't cover at the moment, well then it's going to hold them in good stead to be able to have 3 wins and a serious percentage. Go through it again. What is their percentage?
239.87.
I mean, that's as good as a couple of extra wins as well.
Though there is one really disappointing element that we have to talk about with Ajax. They're 11-1 in all the quarters. So what's going on there, Lockie? Like
11-1.
If he was worth his salt, they'd be 12-0.
Okay, as I said last week, full support of the board, and they continue to do that. What about Peg sitting in 5th spot with a percentage of 78?
Yes. That's a very interesting result. It's an interesting ladder, this Premier C one, but looking through Peg, so it's wins of a 2-point win over Paran in the first round of the season. They get done by 77 points by the Parkdale Vultures in round 2 and then come back to win by 18 points over Mazenod. You don't see this scoreline too often, though. Peg 6-12-48, Mazenod 4-6-30, so a low-scoring contest out there at the runway, is that what they call it?
The playing field. It might be called the runway. I think they call things weird stuff. You know, the whole snake pit and the snowfields, according to our man.
Snake pit weird?
Well, it's not for me.
Joey,
it's not for me,
that's
but
not how
it is
I
for our
heard it.
colleague who's not here.
Marcus Holland, the man from the snowfields.
Of course, Old Scotch is known as the cave.
Yes.
Doesn't look like a cave at all. It's just what they call it. De La Salle, where you were on the weekend, the Dairy Bell, because the milk bar across the road is where the old...
yes, yep. It is the runway, I've just found out. So
there you go.
There you are. Pretty soggy runway on the weekend.
Jack BEHNK doesn't really need to listen to any of this,
No, he doesn't.
Let's have a chat to him about the fact that he kicked 12. He's still 88 short of the ton, but somehow you blokes reckon he's going to get there. Hello, Jack BEHNK.
Hello, lads. How are you?
Going pretty well, mate. Going pretty well. Let me just start with this. Have you come down from the sky yet? The amount of time you spent up in the air?
Oh, yeah, I'm down now.
A couple of nice handy hangers you got there, Jackie boy. Are they a part of your best?
Oh, yeah. I reckon the fun was pretty good on the weekend. The boys were putting it up nice and well for me, so yeah, got a bit lucky there.
Mate, 12 snags. Can you take us through each one blow by blow?
Oh,
you may struggle.
You want to know every one of them?
No.
Do your best.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, fair few set shots. Got the marks inside 50. The boys were delivering it in pretty nicely. And then a couple on, I think it was mostly set shots. But yeah, the boys were kicking them in pretty nice on the way.
Yeah, that's good news as far as you're concerned, mate. Take us through your season so far. So the Tigers heading down to Premier C footy last year after a tough year in the Bees, but you've started this year super.
Yeah. Officer Bowie at Oak Street, which traditionally we're pretty bad playing them over there. Like just down the road, so a bit of rivals, and then got them by I think it was like 4 points in round one. So that was like got the off to a flyer, which everyone was pretty happy with. Round two was Ajax. We knew they were going to be pretty good. Western Week on a Sunday, and then they got off hot for us, and then pretty much chasing us all day. But they just got the better of us, to be honest. We were pretty crap, but they were a good side, so they'll be the benchmark, I reckon, at this stage. But yeah, then on the weekend pulled our stuff together and played awesome as a side and got done by 80 points, I think we got them by. So, yeah, it was a pretty good win, first game up, so can't complain.
And Jack, mate, we've spoken about your 12 goals. You've got 19 now in the season. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast, you'll know that Joey Pignataro refuses to accept any possibility that a player can kick the ton in the ammos. You're looking, maybe not likely, but you're looking that you only need another 81, mate. Can we rely on you throughout the rest of the season?
Oh, I don't know. That might be a bit of a stretch, but I'll try my best.
Good man. That's all we need.
Well, that's all we need. You're going to try your best, are you, Jack? Look, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying
Yes,
over the last couple of years, it's been very tough for any person in the Premier grades to get anywhere near 100 goals because I think the team defences are so well set up. A lot of time you don't reckon the team that St Bede's are playing this weekend is going to try and shut down Jack now, Paddy?
I think they might put one or two or perhaps three or four to him. Jack, I want to ask you a question about a few players that have come back to the footy club this season. Dan and Tom Garside, of course, legends of St Bede's Mentone. How's it been playing with those two?
Oh, mate, yeah, they're unreal. I think Dan probably had his best game weekend. He was awesome. But yeah, it was good. Obviously, last year was a pretty tough year, and we're like really young side. So like having them come back, like bit of stability in the team and like bit of cool heads, and like they go hard on anyone. They're two big boys. Like it's pretty awesome having them in the side. Like very valuable.
So you started last year, mate, in the under-19s. You go up to the seniors. You kicked 24 goals from 11 games in Premier B footy, and as you mentioned, a pretty tough year for your footy club. What did you learn from 2024 that you can take into 2025?
Well, towards the back end, I think we had 3 wins for the year, and like there was just a few games where we turned it on when we're like when obviously really young side, but when we're on, and we can match it with anyone. But going down a grade, it's probably like, all right, we're going to be more competitive. Obviously, got a few of the boys back, like the Gar side. It's like we're a good team, and just being able to have the self belief that we can do it, you know what I mean, like, and can compete. Like we've done it at higher grades, so there's no reason we can't push to the pointy end of the year this year.
I totally agree with you on that, Jack. And one thing I find really good about St Bede's is when you get a home game at Brindisi Street Oval, you make it really tough for the opposition to come out there and not only not enjoy themselves, but they struggle to beat you guys at home when you're on song. How big of an impact is it to have a home ground where you're so dominant against the opposition?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Well, we call it the pit. Mate, it's awesome. Obviously, it's a pretty small ground, a funny-shaped ground, but, like, we love it there. It's a contested game. Like, I don't know, that's what we're all about. So we love it coming down, and then the boys are always absolutely packed behind the goal, so it makes it pretty hostile for anyone coming down, and first game back there on the weekend, mate, it was awesome. Absolutely loved playing there.
I remember, Paddy, playing for St Bernard's and having to go out to Mentone. A long way to drive from Essendon, and it didn't matter that if you're in the twos or the threes, you got the same level of abuse from the blokes behind the goals. It didn't really matter. Your next home game is in a couple of weeks against Marsland. This weekend, you get to play on Toorak Park, Jack, which is a William Buck Premier ground given the old Zavarians, but you're taking on Paran there. I mean, you just kicked 12 on your home deck. You're looking at a bowling green you're playing on this weekend.
Yeah, I've seen that's been underdone construction for a while. So, yeah, the boys are hyping that game up a lot, actually. Keen to see how it looks and, have a run around on it.
I'm keen to see you attempt to kick the ton as the season continues, Jack, and put our man Joey right into the corner. Thanks for joining us on For the Love of the Game.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me, guys.
Great to spend some time with Jack BEHNK from St Bede's. They've got a big game against Paran this week. I'm declaring he won't get to double digits.
Double digits?
No, he won't get to double digits this weekend.
Won't get to triple digits for the season?
Unlikely.
Maybe for later,
Unlikely. But BRAYDEN MAY from Community TV and the Herald Sun, as he does every week, joins us on For the Love of the Game. Hello, BRAYDEN.
Hello, guys. How are we?
Going very well, thank you. Jackie BEHNK's up to 19 goals. I want to ask you about Ton Watch before we let you go today, but I want to start with Ajax because at the top of this segment, I talked about the Jackers. I talked about the fact that my colleague, Lockie Buzzard, reckons, no, don't pump us up. We're not very good. We're very young. We've probably got some inexperience. They're 3-0 with an incredible percentage, and they don't look like losing. Can anyone knock off the Jackers?
Oh, that's a very good question this early in the season, but they're absolutely flying. Like, that was a massive win against Paran on the weekend. Like, it wasn't easy conditions for footy either across Melbourne. It was our first real taste of winter, as I'm sure everyone knows. But the thing that I'm really enjoying about their development, like, obviously Simon Ritchie's out for the season with an Achilles injury, and they're just finding other avenues to goal.
Clearly, finding other avenues. I'd like it if they kick straight. That would be my only concern about the Jackers. Are there a couple of names in the team that people can keep an eye on from the point of view of maybe we don't know them that are actually having an outstanding first month of the year?
Well, Jordan Cullen was fantastic on the weekend. Did most of his damage in the second half. He ended up with 5 goals. But co-captain Corey Zielinski, he's a star across half-back with Aaron Breyer. Jack Hart and Nick Pike are 2 young guys that played their first games of the year on the weekend. Jake Robrell was solid in the ruck. But one man that you obviously wanted me to ask about, Jethro Gunn. He wasn't there on the weekend. He's actually still playing school footy. He missed that game on the weekend. So I'm not sure when we're going to see him back in the VAFA.
That's a shame because he's been on fire to start the season, Brayden. School footy. Yep, young fella.
I like where his priorities lie. School footy over Jackers on the weekend.
I don't know about that. I'd like to see him kick more bags. Brayden, let's move on to the divisions. Where would you like to start?
Well, yeah, there's plenty of talking points out of the weekend, but one place I want to start with might be in Division 2. Whitefriars, they're almost giving the coach a bit of a heart attack. They're 3-0, but their last 2 games, a combined margin of just 7 points, which is a huge result. To pick up those sort of wins so early in the season, I just don't think it can be understated. Like, obviously, as we get towards more July, August, games are going to be tighter as finals come to life, but they're really looming as a premiership contender at the moment.
I'm just looking through your article on the Herald Sun website, Brayden, and there's a bit of injury concern, though, with one of the leading forwards in the amateurs going down.
Yeah, Sam Kaseka, he was injured in round 2, and I asked Luke what was happening. He was more than open, and then he said, still waiting on some scans, but it's looking like he could miss the rest of the year, which is a huge blow. Obviously, their leading goal kicker last year. He's not the only one. Dan Hughes suffered a serious knee injury on the weekend. They finished with 1 on the bench, so it speaks to the level of footy that they're playing at, that they're still able to push through. And the mentality I love that he says, I like to think your best 22 is an available 22 and not looking at the injury list.
I've got South Melbourne Districts next week. I want to go to Therapanola next because I saw something, Joey, across the VAFA HQ socials on the weekend. A goal after the siren. What?
Yeah, Dan Cullen, and he might not have to buy beer post-game at Ferry ever again. Kicked a goal on debut. What a remarkable effort. And if you have seen the video that is on, obviously, Ferry and the VAFA socials, what I love is there's a young fella in the background of the video saying, is that Dan? And that just shows what it's all about. To kick that goal, it was about 20 out. It wouldn't have been easy. Like, it was blowing a bit of a gale out in Melbourne's north. So, like, to go back and slot that is huge. And that's a great win for Theory, especially against the Monash side, who they'll probably be battling with in that middle part of the ladder.
You know what? They came from 19 points down in the final term to win that game of footy too, the boys of Terry Pennell. I'd love to find out because I happened to watch Harry O'Farrell for Carlton on the weekend kick the match-winning goal against the Cats in the VFL. And part of the commentary was obviously living out every boyhood dream, the same stuff, but he grew up barracking for Carlton. Like, did Dan grow up barracking for Therry and he got the boyhood dream to kick the match-winning goal for his team? Or because that's your local club, that's where you play, that's your boyhood dream? What do you reckon, Brayden?
That's an excellent question. Like Dan, obviously, he's got a fantastic footy CV. He's played some out in the Eastern League and things like that. He actually didn't play last year, so he's a really experienced footballer. And Terry are very, very young. So, like, to have a guy step up in that moment is probably almost the right player to have in his hands in that moment as well.
I want to go back to Div 1 for a second and talk about Q. 39-point winners over Oakley on the weekend.
Yeah, they're absolutely flying. This was a clash between two unbeaten sides and, again, showed off their scoring power, 22 scoring shots to 13. Will Leyland obviously finished with 6 majors. That's a bag in modern footy. He's got 15 in 3 games, so the Bears are flying. They might be the one to beat right now, especially with Old Peninsula. They're two sides that I think we're really excited to see how they develop in the next few weeks, especially towards the halfway point.
It's a fascinating looking ladder in Division 1. Q sitting at the top, as you said, undefeated. And then you've got Ormond, who have had some lean pickings in the last few years, also undefeated. Old Peninsula in third, also undefeated. And the likes of Brunswick are sitting in the middle of the table off the back of a loss to the Pirates on the weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I think by the time we get to round 18, you're going to look at a team that might finish 5th or 6th and actually think they could win the premiership if they had a snuck in. But it just goes to show how tight this competition. But Old Peninsula, one thing that caught my eye that I might quickly touch on, a guy by the name of Kobe DeLayas, he rocked into the club in pre-season, literally off the street. He's in amongst the friendship group that was there. He's kicked 4 on the weekend. He hadn't played footy in 4 years. And now he's the full forward down there. Like those sort of guys are worth their weight in gold when they just walk in off the street. And as Brendan Dunn, the coach, told me, he hadn't even gone on the phone to this guy. He just turned up at training and they've landed on a full forward. One of the hardest positions that can actually be to land in local footy.
Absolutely, no question about that.
Now, Braden, before we get on to Tunwatch, anything else to touch on?
Well, just might quickly touch on Division 3. I think Jase mentioned the Richmond Central and Latrobe Uni game as one that we were keen to see the result of last week. And Richmond Central and Michael Motter's side, they're just flying a 74-point win. Campbell Mallow was best on ground. Jack Bilson impressed. Mitch Gleeson kicked another 3 goals. They're going to take some beating, I think, in that division.
I'm just looking at the ladder right now for Division 3 and I see Powerhouse are streets ahead of Richmond Central from a points for perspective and percentage. I just wonder at different points, and I know it's not going to happen, but the idea of potentially after the first month of a season looking at a regrading. Perhaps if you look at the bottom of Division 2 when it comes to the ladder there, Paddy, you've got a team who's currently shooting the lights out in Division 3, whether there is an opportunity. Now, it happens in the girls, it happens in the under-19s, it can happen in the thirds competition. I just wonder whether we consider it. Now, I'm not saying for a second that Powerhouse would be open to the fact that they didn't go up as the 10th best team 4 weeks into a new season, given they've just been relegated and brought back down a division without the opportunity to play off in a final series. But considering the way they've started this year, maybe it's something we look at down the track.
Yeah, you look at the results. They've kicked 92 goals in 3 games, wins by 140, 212 and 150 points. So, yeah, if that's not flying, I don't know what is.
And as I look at Tunwatch, which unfortunately I have to deliver being the host of the podcast, Jack Taylor Evans from Powerhouse, no surprise, is sitting on top of the ladder from the Tunwatch perspective with 26 goals next to his name. Jack Kilgore from Old Brighton, he's in the under-19s. He's got 20. Jack BEHNK, who we spoke to a little bit earlier on, has 19. So it's a stack of Jacks at the top of the tree. Rory Calvert from the thirds in the old Zavarians. I could have kicked 18 goals in the thirds in the first month of the season. Simon Heather from Swinburne. Mitch Hart also has 17 from Parkdale in the reserves there. And then there's a couple on 16, Sam Pritchard from West Brunswick and Byron Gunn, which is a cracking name
one of the
as
best.
well, off the back of Jethro Gunn a little bit. I think anyone with the surname Gunn, clearly. What do you reckon, Paddy? Any of those blokes?
I'm relying on my boys at Powerhouse to get it done, I think, because if you're Jack Taylor Evans and you kick another 9 on the weekend, you'll be pretty stoked. If we go through the big bags.
From the weekend?
From the weekend, Jack BEHNK with 12. Mia Ray Clifford who's
Mia
a
Ray?
name who you might remember, now playing for Port Melbourne Chargers,
I think
11 on
Mia
the
Ray,
weekend.
congratulations to her kicking 11. I think Mia Ray is the first player in the VFLW to reach 100 games.
Right, you would know more about me.
I remember
than me,
speaking to
rather.
Mia Ray about that. But anyway, that's just a little side note. Good on her for kicking 11.
You got Jack Cooper with 10 for Old Trinity thirds on the weekend. Jack Taylor-Evans, who we spoken about, with 9. George Brayshaw for Old Haileybury under 19.
Is that the son of?
That is the son of Jing.
I'll have to. It's the son of Jing.
You'll have to be speaking about that one. Anna Vrasecki for Old Scotch, booted 9. Rory Calvert, Simon Heather, Christopher Chilcott, Jack Meredith and Ollie Howe, all with 8 from the weekend's action.
So, Brayden, as we let you go, 26 after 3 rounds is the leader. That means 74 to get in 15 games.
It's a great challenge. I just want to preface it by saying that you touched on Powerhouse. They've probably played 3 of the sides that might be towards the bottom half of the division. So let's keep an eye on whether it can do it against the sides that are probably more likely to challenge for finals. I think that's where we'll get a better idea of if he's going to kick the ton.
Well, that's what I've been saying, but people just want to shoot me down. That's what I'm saying.
You want to shoot down ton watch is what you're trying to do.
That's what I'm saying. Brayden, what are we writing about this week?
Yeah, well, obviously this week we'll have the preview to Collegians and St Bernard's, our game on Community TV. A massive game. Obviously, Collegians coming off that upset of Old Scotch, so they'll be looking to even the ledger and hopefully have a chat to Geordie McKenzie for what should be an exciting game of footy.
Oh, absolutely be an exciting game of footy. It's the Harriet Pignataro Cup, so feel free to ask Josh for some quotes. Not that he'll give you any positive ones. It'll all be about St Bernard's this week, bouncing back after that loss to Old Bright. We look forward to reading about it, Brayden. We know you're about to go on a couple of days hiatus, a well-earned break after a big first month of the season, but we will catch you next week.
Thanks very much, guys. Speak then.
Great to be joined by Brayden May. You can read his stuff on the Herald Sun website as well as Community TV. This weekend, Paddy, it is the Real Stakes round. The Real Stakes is a community footy program created by the footy community to raise awareness of the real harm caused by online sports gambling. Realstakes.com.au. Darren Flanagan, of course, is part of VAFA HQ. He is going to join us in the next couple of days to discuss the Real Stakes in a little bit more depth and give some information on all of that. We'll take a break. After that, I cannot wait to give you the world famous tips. Are you looking to grow your business? William Buck are more than just accountants and advisors who can develop strategic growth plans for your business. With over 125 years' experience, William Buck has expertise in navigating through challenging times and has been working closely with the VAFA community, creating positive change for individuals, businesses and community organisations. William Buck's team of specialist advisors work collaboratively, providing you with 360 support. Schedule a complimentary consultation today by visiting williambuck.com. Just about done for another week on For the Love of the Game. Now it's time for the world famous tips. I'm actually surprised how many people hang on for the tips, given we've done it for 7 years. And for the first 6, no one actually listened to them. I used to say I got 5 every week. Now I'm not allowed to because the schedule actually keeps the tips, which is really annoying because I only got 1 on the weekend and he's got it here in front of me. You and I both got St Kevin's. You got Old Brighton, of course, who beat St Bernard's. And you got the Old Zaverians home at the death, which means your season tally is 19, and my season tally is 17. That, of course, includes Premier B.
We've got 3
we've both
apiece.
got 3 on some different games. Now, let's look ahead to this week. We'll start with your section, Premier B. Old Geelong are taking on the Hampton Rovers.
Yeah, I can't go past the Ogs, especially at their home deck.
Geez, you wouldn't want to, would you?
I don't think so. Look, I think I'm actually really bullish on Hampton. I think there's a story similar. Jack BEHNK mentioned this, where they got some wins at the back end of the year in 2024. St Bede's Mentone is what I'm talking about there. Mm-hmm. I feel like Hampton's living out a similar story. The young guys are coming on quite rapidly. I think they'll be eyeing off the back end of the year to steal a few, but the Ogs too powerful at this stage of the year.
So Old Geelong for me as well. What about the Panthers? Old Carey will take on Sats's men, the Caulfield Grammarians at the Carey Sports Complex, one of my favourite venues to attend.
See, this is a really difficult game to pick because Caulfield has been a little bit up and down this year so far. So I'm feeling confident that they can play their best footy. I just think Old Carey at home, considering what we know about them so far, it's pretty hard to tip against the Panthers. I'm going with them this weekend.
Same for me there. I love Old Carey. I love the way they've started this year and I love what they're doing. So I can't go past the Panthers, especially at home. Sorry, Satsy boy. Old Trinity, they're taking on Old Melbournians. Now, this is going to be a very, very good game. Do we know if Adam Tomlinson's playing again?
I don't think so. I reckon if he's available to play VFL, that's where we'll find him. I'm going with the OMs.
OMs?
I think they can win away from home. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, they've won the most quarters out of any VAFA team in Premier B. They're the highest scoring team in Premier B, but they're 1-2. I don't think their record reflects their play. I think they get it done.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, that's going to be a fun phone call for you on Monday when you speak
Jerry
to Donald.
O'Donnell's.
And he says, well, at least Joey tipped us. Because you clearly won't be in the good books. You're already not in the good books with Williamstown. We'll do that game now. It's 2:20 on Saturday. They're going out to Charlesworth Park to take on Jared Geishan. So again, you got a couple of favourites here. Con already can't stand you, even though he let you in the rooms after the game. Geish loves you because you're both proud Richmond men. Who's winning this game of footy?
Look, I'm already in the freezer with Con, so I may as well just go that little bit deeper. I might have freezer burn by the time I get out. Old Ivanhoe to win at home.
Okay. I know I said I'm friends with Williamstown, but I too am going for Old Ivanhoe. I can't not back them at Charlesworth Park. And the last game, can Travis Ronaldson get the Roys over the line against the Wellers?
I think he can.
You think he can?
I think he can. I'm going with Fitzroy. I think that at Brunswick Street Oval, I saw some really good signs in the flesh last weekend. I think on a drier day, they will be better for the run. They will have to likely do it, though, without young 19-year-old Darcy Winstanley, who suffered a collarbone injury in the loss to Williamstown CYMS. But Fitzroy for me.
And Old Camberwell for me.
Lovely.
Because I don't love going exactly the same, so we do have some separation. Let's flip over to William Buck Premier, round 4. This will conclude the first month of the season, and I'm still got no idea if we're any closer to knowing who is who in the zoo other than maybe Brighton. So we'll start with the Tunners. They're taking on St Kevin's in a ding-dong battle that will be heard from 1:45 on 11:16 SEN, the app, or vafa.com.au. You saw St Kevin's on the weekend. I saw Brighton. Which way are you leaning at Brighton Beach Oval?
So this is one of my favourite stats that I've found when I was researching this game. So the last 5 games between St Kevin's and Brighton. So
it's a cracking stat, this.
So what's important to know is that the last 4 that they've played have been decided by a kick or less.
Correct.
How many points was the 5th game in that sequence decided by?
That would have been the grand final of 2023. No?
Round 6, 2023, 7 points the difference. So in the last 5 games...
So the grand final was after that?
The largest margin has been 7 points.
Before that, the grand final was 2022.
Yes, I'll take you through it. So the semi-final last year, Sam Flockhart wins the game. Brighton win by 6 points in the last minutes at Elsternwick Park. The week before that, Brighton won by a point. They were 5 goals up in the third term. Scob flew home, just fell short at Brighton Beach Oval. Earlier in the season, St Kevin's handed Old Brighton its first loss by 2 points. You have to go back to 2023. St Kevin's by 4 points at Brighton Beach Oval.
Right.
Earlier in the season, Old Brighton by 7 points at the TH King. So these squads love playing crackers. So I'm hoping for the absolute same at Brighton Beach Oval on the weekend, and I can't go past the Tunners at home.
You're going for Brighton?
I'm going for Brighton.
After all of that, I too am going for Brighton. Now, the ground doesn't fear for St Kevin's at all.
Certainly not.
But I've got question marks as to whether St Kevin's can kick a big enough score on the back of seeing Brighton on the weekend. Unfortunately, Hamish Dick will be missing. He suffered a concussion. Hopefully he's okay because it looked pretty bad and pretty nasty. He did walk off the ground. He did need the assistance of the trainers, but our thoughts are with Hamish and, of course, 21-day protocol.
Yeah, big weekend, I think, for Hamish Reamers. Hugo Higginbotham's man who comes up against Felix Flockhart in the ruck. Willie Coates is still a couple of weeks away. We hope we see him sooner rather than later. The big V ruckman from last year at St Kevin's.
Now, I love nothing more than a rivalry in the competition. I like to create rivalries that probably aren't there, but I didn't create this one. These two teams just absolutely hate one another. It is Old Scotch and the Old Zavarians. Again, you'll be able to live stream that one on vafa.com.au, the coverage from 1:50. I'm telling you, they hate one another more than any two teams in the competition. It is well worth watching this game of footy. Which way are you going?
This is borderline a flip of a coin, I think, because if you remember back to the back end of 2024, Old Zavarians were in a little bit of a hole. They needed to win in the last game of the season and hope some results fell their way to make the finals. They held up their end of the bargain. They beat Scotch at Camberwell Sports Ground. I think after last week's performances, it's pretty hard to look past the Red and Black Mafia. I'm going to take Dan Donati's men in a tight one.
Okay, I am going for Mark Nat to bounce back in a coaching masterclass. It has taken Scotch the best part of 20 years to overcome the Old Zavarians. When they did, they then did it a couple of times in a row. They'll be burning because they lost that last game of the year. I know they went on and won the flag, but they'll also be burning the fact they dropped last Friday. So an extra day's break to sit on it and stew, and I reckon they'll turn it around back at home this weekend. Let's flip over to the Harriet Pignataro Cup. It's a no-brainer, really. I don't think the Lions can win another one in a row, even if it is at the Harry Trott Oval. I think the Berry Mayhood will be having nightmares about coming up against St Bernards this weekend, and I can't see Steve Alessio's men dropping this one.
I think our man Alex Lukic has convinced me. I think Collegians get it done at
for
home.
you then, is it? Didn't speak all that well, did he? Okay.
Collegians for me.
Okay, Collegians for you. And just bringing that one up, if you do want to watch it, as Brayden May said a bit earlier on, it's the Community TV doubleheader. You can watch the reserves before the seniors coverage begins at 11:35. Now, I'm going to be fascinated which way you go with Old Haileybury and the University Blacks, because Wardy's team did so much right on the weekend, just fell short to the Old Zavarians. The University Blacks had a great win against the University Blues. This one's at Haileybury. I'm not sure of the conditions this far out from Saturday. If it's cold and wet, maybe I'd lean towards the Blacks, but I want to go for Wardy's team. I think they've got the right mix here.
I think Wardy's a kind of coach. You mentioned how Scotch would be burning after last week's loss. I think the Bloods will be feeling the same way, being in front of the Zavs for such a long time. I think they've shown us quite clearly their credentials. They're a team that want to push the Big Four and make a play at trying to enter into the bottom part of the top four and play finals footy in 2025. I think they win this one.
Okay, and I think they might have slightly got the wood on the University Blacks at the moment when it comes to the recent head-to-head battles. Both sides did come up after the 2022 season where they played on the Elsternwick Park Lake in that grand final.
Right.
Don't ever go back and watch it unless you want to watch footy played on a lake. The last game of the round is the University Blues and De La Salle at Melbourne Uni Oval. Have the University Blues left their home ground yet this year?
No, they beat Collegians at the Tross a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, so they've gone once out of the precinct, but otherwise they're just parked at home. What's with the fixture? We just want the University Blues to play at home every single week. You know what? I'm going to go for them this week too.
The Blues for me as well.
Yeah, I don't think
We're
Marty
in
Gleeson
agreement
can
with
put
that.
two bad games together in a row. Not that he had a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. Hey, this weekend is also the Real Stakes round.
Yes.
It is a community footy program created by the footy community to raise awareness of the real harm caused by online sports gambling, a collaboration between the Amos, the Adelaide Footy League and the Perth Footy League. There is more information coming up at a seminar on May the 7th. You can register at realstakes.com.au. And of course, gambling participation unfortunately has doubled since 2010, with millions spent on marketing that makes gambling seen like a normal plan and part of sport. And footy plays a vital role in supporting the well-being, of course, of players, coaches, volunteers and staff. So by tackling these issues through community footy, we can drive real change and build healthier, stronger clubs. Realstakes.com.au. Hopefully the schedule is back next week.
I do hope his voice is okay, because he's been getting a decent workout in the early parts of the season. I think he was at a Carlton function over the weekend for the 95 Premiership, our man. So hopefully he's not got a few of those Premiership heroes his lurgy. But yeah, big cheerio to Jase. Hope you're on the mend. Hopefully we can see you out of your private bunker next week.
I'll tell you what, if St Bernards win again, he might not want
He may not come back.
He might just
He
say,
may not
listen,
come back.
just do the podcast between the two of you. I'm not sure I can sit there for an hour and a bit. Thank you, Paddy. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, Joey. Enjoy yours.
VAFA.com.au is where you go for all your news and views. And we'll be back next week to wrap up round 4 of the season. Look ahead to round 5.